Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about interesting news. This is actually the creator of Super Smash Brothers, Masahiro Sakurai. I think that's his name. He is encouraging Japanese developers to make more games that are more Japanese. Now, this is the opposite of what a lot of these companies have been doing, including Square. They've been chasing Western audiences with Western-style games, and they've been failing miserably at it.
And I want to point out, like, for years, a lot of these games people were playing that were Nintendo games and all that. They were Japanese games.
Yes.
And a lot of games people like and that were the ones that still stand the test of time, still popular now, are Japanese games. So honestly, I want to be like, by all means, please keep making Japanese games.
Yeah. Ask Square-Enix how that's going for them. They've had multiple misfires chasing Western games, Western AAA titles. And all they have to do is be the best JRPG maker out there, and they just have forgotten how to do that, apparently. So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture, news, views, and rants, guys. You will get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo.
Go out to Substack, clownfishtv.substack.com, and you can sign up for notifications when we post new videos. Go out there and you'll get an email when I post links. And yeah, I am about a day or two behind because we're without power for 2 days. So I will get you guys.
That was not
up.
fun.
It was
0 out
not
of 10.
Fun.
Do not recommend.
All right, so this is we'll go out to the game's radar version of it. This is the guy right here, made Super Smash Brothers. Super Smash Brothers creator says instead of making more Americanized works, Japanese developers should seek the uniqueness and fun of Japanese games. Oh my God. Imagine that.
I think that's sound advice, personally.
Developers should create more games that Japanese people like. Yeah, that's why PlayStation fell off in Japan. They stopped producing games that Japanese players liked.
Well, it's kind of like they kept trying to tell them to do this with manga and stuff and anime. And it's like, no, because people want that. The reason they're popular over here is because that's the kind of stories they want. They don't want a Western. They wanted a Westernized comic. They would just buy a Western comic. Same kind of idea.
Yeah. And that's, so yeah, this was, he had an interview with NTAX reported by Automaton, which I guess this is the original here, but it's a pretty lengthy article. So we'll go with this one. Sakurai describes how the success of Japanese games in the U.S. kickstarted a trend of developers making Americanized works rather than focusing on more local consumer tastes or their own. You could say that there was a culture of following de facto standards. And that's what happened. Basically, like, oh, there's money in the U.S., let's make more Western games. But I'm like, the reason your Japanese games did well in the West is because Western gamers like the Japanese style.
Right.
Games.
It's really not that hard. Don't listen to these idiots that are telling you to change it because you're better. Like, even the games now, like, you have all these Chinese game companies coming up against them, but they're sticking with their own aesthetic, their own culture. The Chinese games are, and people are liking them because they aren't Western games. And that's what you have to understand. They don't want the Western games. They'd be buying the Western games.
Yes. He doesn't think the overseas market is actually searching for this more Americanized filtered experience. Yeah, actually, there's severe backlash over here, and I think we have people in the West telling these developers the wrong thing, not players, but like localizers and whatever. There's significant blowback when they censor games, when they make translation, judgment calls that usually wind up including more activism or censoring things. There's backlash when they make changes to classic games like Dragon Quest, where they have, instead of male and female characters, you have body style A, body style B, because we don't want people to be offended.
Right.
And then again, giving up on JRPGs with the distinctive Japanese flavor to chase, Forspoken, which was a huge failure, on top of Marvel, which was also a huge failure, and the new Tomb Raider, which was a failure, and all these other damn games. And all you had to do was make Japanese style games there, Square-Enix, but you couldn't do that. I think the idea will be to make games the way you want to make them, and those who agree with you will enjoy them. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think authenticity is important, and people keep trying to do these games by committee or what they think people want, and I think your game's going to be more popular, and your enthusiasm's going to come through, and your love of it's going to come through more if it's actually the game you want to do and a story you want to tell than if you're just trying to pretend to be somebody else.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's one thing I'm really hoping with Sony. And I was covering that they have a new Japanese CEO come in. Sony basically gave up on being a Japanese video game company, Sony Interactive Entertainment, and they shut down the Japanese studio, and they started, running more stuff through California, and they've had massive misfire after massive misfire, culminating with Concord, which cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. Some people are saying it's like $400 million.
They kind of deserved it. But anyway, continue.
They totally deserved it because, again, they're trying to force even most Western gamers don't like Americanized games because a lot of them now are woke. Let's be honest, they are. They're full of DI. They're full of bloat. They're unfinished. I mean, I want things to go back to where they were 15, 20 years ago, where you bought a disc, you paid $60, $70 for the disc, but the game was pretty much complete.
Yeah, most people want that. I think a lot of people want that again. That's why I think there's this big upswing in retro games.
Yeah, and I think it's all kind of tied together. It was simplicity, and it was also a lot of those games. Like I'm going back with my daughter, and she's rediscovering the PS2 era and the PS1 era, and she's fascinated by all these games that came out for the PS2. And you look at the PS2 and you look at the majority of the most popular games, and they were very kind of Japanese flavored games. And you don't see that in the current generations. Even the Sony games are very Western. And not that there's anything wrong with Western games per se. I mean, some of the greatest video game franchises of all time were Western developed, but they were never pretending to be something they weren't. And again, we always expect a certain kind of a game from a Japanese studio. And it's just, the gaming has lost its way. It's the same with the anime becoming kind of a global thing too.
I think so.
Why did it become popular in the first place?
And that's just it. And they keep wanting to change it. And they keep listening to these people who are like, oh, you need to change it. You need to change it. You need to change it for this, Western audience. The thing is, the Western audiences, if they want to play Western games, they'll buy the Western games. They want to read Western books, they'll buy the Western books. But the demand and the reason they're outselling, like in books, for example, all the Western stuff is because people want the Japanese version. They want their story. They want to hear their take. They like their way of telling a story. And if they want the Western ones, they'll go buy that. But they're not. So don't try. Keep yourself, yourself. Stay true to yourself, and your audience will come to you.
Yeah, and that's all you got to do. And you'll find that audience, and not every super Japanese game is going to make it stateside. It was always a treat for us when we got these really weird games that would come over there.
Well, we did the video. What was that one you guys did that was hilarious?
Pularula?
Yes.
Yeah, arcade game Pularula. That was a Taito game, and it was. I think it was released in the West. Well, it was definitely worldwide because the version we were playing was a worldwide version. The Japanese version had the legs popping through the door, and then the door in the middle we had a little elephant pop out of, and I think that was a little risque for YouTube. So we played that version.
Yes.
But it was great, like especially in the 90s and early 2000s, there were all these really strange and wonderful Japanese games that we never saw, and if we did, it was a real treat. And they definitely were for Japanese audiences. But if you were a weeb like I was, it was like, man, this is awesome. We're getting all these Japanese games. And I used to look at the print ads in like EGM from these importers, and they would have all these Japanese games that we were never going to get in the US, and it was a bummer. And now it's like I never thought in a million years that like Square-Enix of all companies was going to basically be in the business of making Western style games. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's not what I want. Nobody wants that. So,
but I think he's right. I think you just stick to what you do well. Don't listen to these idiots telling you to change everything. I think the authenticity, I think the love of what you do, and I think just doing quality work will shine through.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So we're going to wrap it up. I just think it's interesting to have somebody of his caliber come out and say, like, Japanese people should make Japanese style games again.
Yeah, don't listen to these dumbasses, basically. Don't listen
to the dumbasses from California. They're leading you astray, and I think the financials are showing that. So let's wrap this up, guys. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.